Welcome back, everyone, to episode 33 of the Illegal Formation Podcast. After our little Christmas break, Merry Christmas, everyone. Week 17 has concluded, and here's our instant reaction. I am your host, Scott. Joining me today is Joey, as you can see to my right. Joey, how was your Christmas?
Pretty good.
Pretty good? Pretty solid?
How was your
My Christmas was pretty fantastic. I got this jacket, and I'm excited to wear it to possibly the last Giants game of this season. And yeah, I've got a lot to say about the Giants because they did not give me a very Merry Christmas this year. No, for the second year in a row, we held the first overall pick, and a Week 17 game that we came out victorious had plummeted us down out of that spot, and we defeated the Raiders this week 34-10. And like I said, we dropped from the first overall pick to the second overall pick. And the Giants can get it back if the Raiders beat the Chiefs next week and the Giants lose to the Cowboys. However, if they win next week versus the Cowboys, they can manage to drop to the seventh overall pick below the Commanders. And this is just another franchise altering course of events. And you just have to be sick as a Giants fan. It's the fact that we're never good at the right time. We're only good when it hurts us, And it's just, 2 years in a row being in this situation. People go back and forth about the philosophy of tanking, but it just feels like the whole league is playing a joke on us, that we get these wins at the end of the season when it actually does hurt you, okay? Because we had a culture win last year, and look at us this year. That Week
yeah, the
17
history?
win did not help us at all this year. That did not raise the standard of the Giants culture. It just like it created this fans unhappy with the outcome of a win, which is one of the hardest things you can do as a franchise. And like I said, it feels like they're playing a joke because the Raiders did not seem interested in winning this game at all. They allowed 150 rushing yards on defense. Geno Smith was awful. 2 interceptions. He's a veteran guy, and so is Pete Carroll. You would have thought they would have been fired up to play in this game, and you saw how they played last week versus the Texans defense. They played better in that game. And in this one, they're 3 of 13 on third down. Genti had no room to run versus the worst run defense in the whole league, and they allow a kick return touchdown by Deontay Banks. The icing on the cake for Giants fans, out of all things, sealing it late to make it 27-10 late. I mean, we've had kick return problems for a long time, and Deontay Banks is a player that's been scrambling for opportunity, and we just now get this from him. Like I said, only good when it hurts you, right? And this just signals to me all of this mess, 2 years in a row being in this position where this is the same outcome. Joe Shane must be fired. No, this isn't all his fault, but things have only gotten worse since we fired Brian Dable. And if we're going to blame Brian Dable for this mess, then Shane is just as much to blame. He doesn't do the little things right, like depth, managing injuries on special teams. It's been a huge issue for the Giants every season. And his biggest misses, like trading for Waller or in the draft, are colossal wastes of draft capital and money, and nobody ever develops because he failed to create a quality coaching environment with and around Brian Dable. So the time is up for Joe Shane, and someone else needs to manage this franchise. And I guess, at least for now, early in the whole market for head coaches and general managers, my leading guys right now would be Clint Kubiak of the Seahawks and the Rams assistant general manager, John McKay, who's been there for 10 years. So, Joey, that was my rant. That was my monologue of despair around this Giants situation, losing the first overall pick. What is your reaction as a Cowboys fan to this?
I think I just think the Raiders out tanked you. They clearly wanted the loss more. And then just watching that game early on, I feel like you guys are just the offense was just taking what was they were given. They didn't realize they were supposed to lose. It seemed like,
Yeah.
and it was a nice little veteran move by Pete Carroll, Geno Smith, trying to lock up that number one pick. That's just their only job at this point. I feel like there's a world where both these guys are gone next year. I don't really have the temperature for Pete Carroll. I don't really know what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, I really wasn't surprised by it just because you guys have a history of it. I think the one that sticks out to me most is just like your Tommy DeVito 3-win week
Yeah.
that season. That's the one that sticks out the most because that was the best quarterback class we've seen, and then we had that happen. So what is like what overall what do you think of the situation? And I also the talk about Joe Shane. I just think they're Ian Rappaport already said you guys are keeping him. I fully expect him to have his job there. And I also find the quarterback situation interesting and all the smoke around that.
Yeah.
Um, how do you feel now coming off that win? Like, what do you think?
Well, the one thing that I am sort of glad about is, assuming the Giants don't somehow earn back the first overall pick, I shouldn't have to listen to any of this more ridiculous conversation surrounding Jackson Dart and trading him and, trying to get Mendoza. Or now it's going to be, somebody else.
It's Dante Moore.
At that QB2 spot, there's a lot of shakeup for who should be the second selected quarterback in this year's class, and that would be the territory the Giants are in. So I feel like, having a conversation about trading away Dart and taking a QB at 2 just seems a lot more ridiculous, and I shouldn't have to listen to that. That's pretty much the only good thing I feel about any of this. I'm not impressed that Jackson Dart could go off in week 17 versus the Raiders. I'm just not. That team clearly gave up and they benched a lot of their starters. So did the Giants, which is why I'm still confused. We managed to win, but yeah, that's kind of my outlook on what's a possible positive takeaway. But the negative takeaway, sure, I'll acknowledge that Ian Rappaport did say he thinks Joe Shane's job is safe with the Giants, but I don't really see it that way. I think you're gonna get a lot of, I'm gonna call it smoke. I'm just gonna come out and say
It's
I don't
not
believe
what it
it.
is.
It's been this narrative, since Brian Dable's been fired, that Joe Shane is likely to stay. But in my
It's a
opinion,
narrative. It's the news.
it's the news. It's the news that's coming out, but I
You're
I
trying to
don't
paint
believe
this
it.
as a narrative.
I don't believe it at all. I really truly don't believe it because if you saw the Giants or Joe Shane's press conference during the Giants bye week, you could hear it from the New York media, and that feeling of resentment is amongst the fans too, and the Mara family knows it. And I believe honestly they just wanted to get through this season and not rock the boat and just kind of do the best they could to develop Jackson Dart after firing the one guy that truly did want to bring him in here outside of Kafka and just kind of get through the rest of the season. But I do believe the plan is going to be to clean house. I just refuse to believe it on levels beyond denial that Joe Shane deserves to keep
Denial.
his job here. It doesn't make any sense after what he's done over 4 years. And, clearly after firing Dable, things only got worse. And, the same failures, whether or not to tank. I mean, even good GMs like Howie Roseman have pulled it off before. And, when the team comes out flat and there's no depth, I mean, I don't know what else you need to see as, a fan of the team or someone who's making these decisions to believe that he should be gone. And, you know, just kind of steering the conversation in a, a further direction, assuming we do get a new GM, like, beyond who it's going to be, like what is wrong with the Giants and what do they need to fix, I think is an interesting question, at least because they had all this praise for the defensive talent and it hasn't panned out. Is that just coaching, and how many of that is the players that the Giants have? And then on offense, is Malik Neighbors, Scadaboo, Wandale, and an offensive line that's one injury away from collapsing really like that great of a thing to start with, or do we also need attention on that side of the ball too? I think it's an interesting question to see what approach they will take. I think building through the trenches would be the surest thing, but
There's an easy answer, and it's your O line.
yeah,
You mentioned it. There's like one injury away, and then there's a huge problem. I think that tells you the problem you guys are having, and you can see it on a week to week basis. I feel like you guys have gotten a little better this year, but I always find it odd how little you guys do invest in the O line compared to like around the league. Because I feel like you guys like to do like patchwork stuff, and I just don't understand for like a rebuilding team why you're patching it.
yeah,
Like what you use premium picks to draft O linemen. If you don't, and if you think you're too high on a guy, that's when you trade back. Like
yeah,
there's
and
so many avenues here which you could easily solve this problem, and you just refuse to go. They refuse to go down the path. I just don't get it. Like I don't know. Just comparing it to Dallas, like it seems like Dallas won't do anything other than draft O line, and then they'll
yeah.
go from there once the O line is like solidified. So that's just kind of the opposite. I'm on the opposite end of that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talented wide receivers that is certainly going to create some conversation. But if that's the case, move back, like you said. If you're too high, and let people take those wide receivers and then get a good value or some extra draft capital on that offensive lineman. I think it's something the Giants have been missing for years is a strength being the O line. I mean, they're healthy and they're not great right now, and that's considered an improvement. Like that's one of the core issues. And then defensively, the front seven and then the tackling from the back end like truly is a liability, the run defense. And some of it I'm sure is schematic and the team being young, but overall I'd say we need another 3 tech. We need more depth at linebacker. Is Tyler Nubin the guy at strong safety? There's questions to be had, but yeah, overall I want Joe Shane gone. I don't want him to be the one to try to find the solutions to those problems because I really don't think he's the guy.
Got a follow-up question for you.
What's up?
So what do you like? So you're like are talking about like Dayball's already gone and you want to fire your GM. What would that mean for Jackson Dart, you think? Like, because then you have a head coach that doesn't want him in a sense, and then your GM didn't draft him. So where's the commitment to Dart in any sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then you're gonna have to convince yourself in a hiring process. You're gonna hire people who want Jackson Dart, I guess, which could also lead you down a bad path. You know,
It could. It could. You could
like
pick the
also
wrong guy because he's
one
a
more
better
thing.
fit with Dart.
Just a year ago, like 26 teams showed us what they thought of Dart, not taking him in the first round. So like, how much do you like? How much did that really change this year from what he showed you on the Giants? Like, that's where I'm at with it. Because I feel like I don't know, like there's a world where you go another quarterback. I feel like if you fire all these guys, they're gonna go and new rebuild it all. You know?
Yeah, there's always a chance that they fall in love with one of these prospects. But like I said, at the second overall pick, I think there was a I will acknowledge there was a conversation to be had, but I didn't think it was very valid to get all the hype it did to say, hey, how much can we get for Dart compared to trading the first overall pick, and how much better of a prospect is Mendoza than Dart? But I don't think we're gonna get that better prospect confidence out of the guys behind Mendoza when we're comparing them to Dart. And I think, a lot of the questioning around Dart, I don't really understand it because every game that the Giants have won, for starters, has been with him, whether the injuries to guys like Scattaboo or Neighbors have been there or not. Yeah. And it's not a lot of wins, and yeah, he has taken hits, and it's an immature play style for a player that needs to realize the bigger picture, that the team is relying on him and needs him to be healthy to be out there, in order for the Giants to win games. I get it, but those are problems that I would much rather have than accuracy or decision making or the ability to create on their own, which is something that, even though I said I wasn't impressed with his performance today, he's gonna break like records for rookie rushing, at least if you pace it out across the season. I mean, what he's done, it has been the Giants offense has gone through him. And I think when you have a quarterback that can do that, it's really something you can't just assume a prospect is going to be able to bring to an NFL level. And it's what a lot of guys who are great starters in today's game still can't do. Guys like Jared Goff are statues, guys who have already retired like Matt Ryan. And it's something that holds those, big pocket passers back. And
Dak's a
ultimately,
pocket passer.
Dak is a pocket passer, but he's got
Matthew
mobility.
Stafford is. Stafford is.
Yeah, but he
There's a
can
lot of.
he can create outside of the pocket because
So how
he's
much do you think you got to be limiting what you actually think of like Mendoza and all that, like these prospects saying they can't create? I feel like that's just like a limited look at things.
it's not to say that, they can't, develop some ability for it. It's more of I'm saying like being able to do that in the NFL and being able to do it in college. We know obviously like every other thing is two completely different things, but it's really being tested moving inside the pocket against these amazing athletic defensive linemen where you have to get away from them and still make that throw. Like it's a really big challenge. And if you can show me you can do that as a rookie, it just shows me that you're just a very natural football player. And I have a lot of confidence that you're going to be a good player. And this prospect could have a higher ceiling as, say, a passer, decision making, accuracy, arm strength, whatever it may be. But there is still the possibility they're a bust and you get nothing out of them. And you have to move off of someone who we have seen is clearly going to be a starter in the NFL and is looking to be like a really good one based on their rookie season. I mean, based on his performance alone, isolating it from the fact he was on the Giants, I think it's relatively quite impressive what he's accomplished. Is kind of my closing statement up on that. To answer your question,
I just don't know how much stock I really put into what I've seen, especially when it's supposed to be all different next year anyway. So I don't really know how much I actually buy what he's doing because I feel like a lot of it's built around him, obviously, but it's like how sustainable is what he does, like on like playing wise. You know what I mean? What he does well, how sustainable is it? I don't know.
yeah, I think we need a coach in there who knows when the right time is to take a risk with him and his legs and to, use passing plays that get him on the move and can weaponize it while not putting him in harm's way. And where the Giants offense, a GM where the Giants offense won't have to rely so much on him creating, and it's just more of like a counterpunch. And that's when I think it's the most effective. And right now, it doesn't look sustainable because he really is trying to win these games, and he's putting it on the line every play. And guys like Mahomes aren't putting it on the line every play when they're on the Chiefs and they're ahead. They're just not doing it. So I think it's in
How
there.
how puzzling do you find it now that we're looking back at it? Like I feel like just with how the season ended and where it went, like wouldn't you have rather just seen Dayball finish the year out and then see what happens?
Yeah,
Just really for the development of Dark, because I feel like once he was fired, the whole development thing just stalled out,
yeah.
and he fell off the cliff. Because you're like stuck with the Dayballs, what you've seen with the Dayball, but since then he's kind of looked not nearly as
Yeah,
good.
he hasn't looked quite the same, and
Yeah,
it definitely has something to do with it because he was close with Dable, and Dable wanted him, and like you said, built it around him. And I thought we should have fired Shane Bowen first. We weren't losing games because of the offense. We were losing games because our defense was terrible, and we just went
yeah.
around and fired him, shortly after Dable, and it just felt like that was there were probably players who were like, why didn't we fire him first? And they give up on the season, and all that's part of it. The whole team just falling apart. We should have just kept Dable and cleaned house at the end of the season, blamed everybody, and then restarted from there. Now we have all this noise. But people wanted a pound of flesh after the amount of disgusting losses the Giants had. They did, and I don't know why they chose not to start with just firing Bowen and hoping that would be enough to satiate the fan base, but it wasn't. So, that's on the Mara family.
My last memory of Dayball was that week 2 game where Russell Wilson had like 500 yards passing, and then you guys had to go ahead touchdown with like 20 seconds left, and somehow
Somehow,
lost it.
yeah,
Yeah, that was my last memory of Dayball, but it's pretty crazy to think about. And it's also just like how backwards this whole past year has been for the Giants. Like, if Dayball's seat, we knew it was hot at the end of last year. Why did they not just move on then? Like, what sense did it make if you already felt a certain way
yeah.
about
To
a guy to
say
bring him into the
if you
next
miss the
year?
playoffs, you're done was the
Yeah,
mindset.
and the whole idea though is just seemed backwards. So then you guys let these two guys who are already hot draft a quarterback just to potentially replace both of them within the same calendar year. I just don't get it.
Yeah,
Because now you're leaving a quarterback for a new regimen that it's just you got to make that fit, and then make these guys want to build around him, and then it's just like instead of just having a clean slate, you never are able to just have the clean slate. It seems like.
no, no, we can't, and that's really what it is, right? It's never a clean transition, and that's why I want to get rid of Joe Shane. We need a clean slate very badly. So I think that's enough about the Giants, and now I will carry us on to the next topic, which is the Chicago Bears, who are 11-4. They're first place in the NFC North. They're playing the 49ers tonight in an NFC showdown, a potential playoff, preview for those two teams. And like I mentioned, the Bears are in first place in their division this season, and it's been the most successful season this franchise has had in decades, honestly, when you scope out. They're ahead of the Packers, who are 9-6-1. The Vikings and Lions are in third and fourth place at 8-8. The Lions just had an embarrassing loss and look lost without Ben Johnson. The Packers, they have these injury problems every year with their quarterback and at critical positions like wide receiver and edge. and the fan base is growing frustrated with Matt Lafleur. And now, here we are in 2025, the Bears, in their first year with Ben Johnson, are the best team in the NFC North. And they're looking to do some serious damage as contenders in the AFC. That is sort of top heavy, I'd say, with the Seahawks and the Rams. And overall, I'm not looking as much here about what's going to happen into the playoffs. It's just what this Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, course of decisions over the offseason and how they've found solutions for Caleb Williams with the offensive line and been able to develop him, and how much of a success it is, and how I'm actually more confident that they're going to stick around than the pairings of Jordan Love and Matt Lafleur and Jared Goff and Dan Campbell. This is year one of this team, and they're not slipping up, and they're playing really smart, and that's why they're getting lucky, and they're winning these really close games. One of the biggest questions heading into this year was Caleb Williams, and he's playing like an absolute superstar. And it seems like the whole team is bought in. The defense is forcing turnovers, even though they're not like a massive strength. They're doing that really well. And
They lead the league.
They lead the league in turnovers, and that's if that's all you're getting, that's all you need to ask for as an offense.
You know what's funny about that?
What?
I think they took Dallas' secondary coach Al Harris. This is his first year in Chicago, and they lead the league in turnovers.
Yeah.
He's the guy that made Trayvon Diggs great, and like those Cowboys defenses with Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
Like he was part of it, and we let him walk out the door. He was a Mike McCarthy coach, so that's another thing. If you guys hire McCarthy, you could see a world where he's your defensive coordinator.
I'm not going to entertain that, but I do want to say how this Bears team reminds me a lot of, mostly because of their defense, the Falcons team that went to the Super Bowl when they had Dan Quinn as their coach, and their defense was predicated on forcing the most turnovers in the league, and they had this very explosive, versatile offense. And it feels very similar to this Bears team, and like how you said with the Cowboys, and how they were structured, which it does kind of make this Bears team seem like their weakness could be that they're a little flimsy on defense, and we'll see and check in throughout the pod to see how they're going against this 49ers team. That should be a real challenge for their defense. But overall, I just feel like I said it earlier this year when I brought it up, and I finally bought into this Bears team. But I really do feel like this coach.
What's that? Usual. Couple months
behind. Well, I wanted to see it, and I mean, there's still reasons to be hesitant, but this is what I do feel like I do know, and that's that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams is the best coach-quarterback pairing in the NFL outside of Andy Reid and Stafford McVay, who's knocking on the door of retirement. Even though he's only 37 years old, we've heard these rumors about Matthew Stafford, and that would leave Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson as the elite coach-quarterback pairing in the NFC, presumably to dominate the NFC playoffs for the foreseeable future.
How'd you fail to mention Hurts and Nick Sirianni?
No, get out of here with those two. No. Howie Roseman is the wizard in Philadelphia who's pulling all of this off. But
we know how he's doing it.
Yeah,
me and you know.
Yeah, but anyway, the bottom line is that this Bears team, I feel really good about them holding firmly onto this NFC North. They may not win it next year, but they'll definitely be in the playoffs. And I don't know if they're going to be able to beat the Rams or Seahawks this year in the playoffs, but I do know that I think pretty confidently that they will be a threat in the divisional round. They will have a chance to get there. And if this Rams-Seahawks team runs into each other, I see no reason this Bears team can't make the NFC Championship to face off against one of them. So, Joey, I just am wondering, what is your outlook on the NFC North and the Bears beyond this season, outside of what they might do in the playoffs?
Just talk about the Bears first. You talked about comparing them to the Falcons. To me, this is like the Cowboys. I feel like they have the same build and the same kind of hype going into the postseason. So it could be like a one and done scenario. They're a young team, but they have the three playmakers on offense, and then Caleb Williams, and what he can do running is what changes these games. But for me, I'm just more disappointed. Number one, the Packers, how much they failed to meet expectations this year.
Yeah.
You can blame the Micah injury, but it was before that they were, floundering for most of the season, I'd say. Just look lost. And when you really lock into the Packers, it's really like you could tell all LaFleur cares about is his offense. So the defense is always a step behind, it seems like. And they're one of the sloppiest teams in football when it comes to penalties and like just dumb mistakes. They gotta lead the league and shit like that. But and that to me, that goes to your head coach, and that's kind of what I'm pointing to is how invested he is in this offense, and just how the rest of the team fail in my eyes.
Yeah, I will say I do think during that Broncos game and leading up before that, kind of around Thanksgiving Toyotathon, as we know, the Packers to me felt like they were heating up and finally starting to actually fire on all cylinders. And then after 3 quarters against the Broncos, everything fell apart after the Micah Parsons injury is really the way I did see is that they were completely demoralized. They also lost Jordan Love. I mean, they don't have him right now. And I think it's a
Malik
problem.
Willis looks better.
Well,
Malik Willis looks better.
I'm not going to say better. Willis is a great backup, and it's great that
He
they
looks
have him.
way better than
But
Jordan Love does, and he actually adds you the run game part of it too, which is scary. And this all brings me to the Titans and how much they fumbled the team that they had with Vrabel, and then how they had Malik Willis there, and then they had Derrick Henry, and they had AJ
and
Brown, and it
then
all
Will
just fell apart.
Levis.
Well, besides
Yeah.
him, they had Malik Willis in house. They just couldn't develop him, and now look at him with Lafleur in Green Bay. He
Yeah.
looks like a starting quarterback
He
easily.
does. No, he looks really good. I think if the Raiders didn't have the first pick, they'd be a team that could look at him. The Jets.
This
Um,
is your Joe Milton. This is how you're
yeah,
looking at Joe Milton.
this is a Joe Milton situation. That's right. But yeah, in terms of the Packers, no, you're right. Overall, about the season and not meeting expectations, absolutely. Last year, I think it was kind of fair to look at the wide receiver situation, how well they played against the Super Bowl champions in the first round, and say this is a contending team, especially with the addition of Micah Parsons. Now they had a rocky start, like you said. I think they were heating up, but regardless, it's clear that they're declining and not going to meet their expectations this year. If this team did anything substantial in the playoffs beyond win a wild card game, I would be pretty shocked. I think they're destined to fall in the divisional round for the most likely. And even though they, like I said, they're going to make the playoffs, it's just not going to be great for them. But what I would like to bring up a team that I feel is more deserving of criticism along these lines.
Before we move on, I just want to add one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what you, me, and Matthew Golden all have in common?
We have 0 touchdowns in the
We have the
NFL.
same amount of touchdowns in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah.
First
Well,
round pick.
yeah. I mean, you want to look at Matt Lafleur for that one and say, you probably wanted this guy. You would think you'd try to use him. Beyond the, you had no Christian Watson early. I get he's a 21-year-old rookie, but if you take him in the first round, he's got to be ready on some level. They're
I have
one of the
multiple.
youngest, huh?
I have multiple things for you.
Yeah,
Because we're talking about the draft now, I wanted to add. I feel like no coach should have any kind of say in who your GM drafts. I feel like it should be like a cutoff, like a hard cutoff. 'Cause I feel like a lot of the issues we see are like these. Because you got to understand which coaches can actually scout and understand talent, and which coaches
right.
can't. Because we see a lot of, and more likely than not, these coaches can't evaluate the talent from college. Because I feel like we see a lot. That's how these busts come, and I feel like maybe that's maybe for Matthew Golden. Like I feel like I was surprised he got drafted where he did. I didn't see him as the best receiver in the draft, and then for him to get picked to where he was, you have to believe your head coach, who's your offensive coordinator, is the guy pounding the table for him, and then to have a whole season with them, and this is what it looks like. That's another strike to me for Lafleur. And talking about Lafleur and all that, like we already acknowledged that the NFL didn't have the 7 seed playoff format. Lafleur would have never made the playoffs in any year without Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. I feel like that's pretty important. But and then to add on to that, we considered them a playoff team before the Micah Parsons trade and all that. So really, how much does that? I get how good he is, but like, how much can that really impact your team? Like, you shouldn't collapse because of his injuries. How I feel about it.
Well, no, you shouldn't collapse because of the injury. But like I said, they lost Watson in that game. They lost Micah. No, they shouldn't have collapsed. But it's not like they collapsed for no reason. I mean, that was definitely a substantial piece of it. And I want to point out to you that the Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst is one of these sort of really uh, these GMs who people are very critical of, the fan base of the Packers, because in years past where they've taken guys like, they had multiple first round picks. They take Quay Walker, a middle linebacker at number 22. Devontae Wyatt was good, and that was one of his better drafts where he got Christian Watson and Dobbs. But overall, he's been a very like SEC
Who was the
dependent.
Iowa D?
The Iowa D end was Lucas Van Ness.
Yeah, he's
He's
been a huge bust.
I wouldn't say huge bust, but he's just not. He's not like a Leonard Williams. Even he's not like a highly productive player. Like he's
He's at the end.
developing. He's a defensive end. Well, he's like the three tech, like the Cameron Hayward defensive end. But yeah, they do put him on the edge sometimes. But ultimately, like I will say, for Matt Lafleur, like I did also say, I'm sure he wanted him, but I'm not gonna come out and say like he told Brian Gutekunst to pick him and that's why they did it. Like I'm sure they were either in agreement or, you know, Gutekunst probably, he is the GM, like you said. They're usually the ones who have the most say in those decisions. But to kind of point to what you're saying about whether a head coach, yeah, it is got to be tough to have an understanding of if your coach is able to scout players.
Yeah,
Are they?
it's
Do
also
they? What's
it's
up?
also like your positional coaches too, like your defensive coordinator or your D line. Like if whatever player you're looking at, they could be in your ear about that guy and have him circled on your draft board, and that's a guy that like that's gonna be a discussion,
But
man.
on
Whoever
some
has more people, you know.
level though, I do think you kind of need that actually. You need your if you're a GM and you're hiring
If I'm
if
paying
you're
you to be
hiring
my
hold
GM,
on, hear me out.
go ahead.
If you're a GM and you're hiring coaches, I would hope that you're hiring coaches that you believe on some level can scout for players that are going to fit their system and are going to be able to learn. They're going to be able to pick up on character traits. Is this guy going to be a hard enough worker to learn my system? All these sorts of things. I would hope a coach can be able to relate to players on that level and understand them and be able to know what they want, know what they need as a coach. And if the GM doesn't trust them to help them say, what do we need here? What do we need on defense? I should be able to ask my defensive coordinator what he thinks the biggest weakness is and kind of compare that to my thoughts and vice versa with the offense. And if you're not getting that done, I'm not saying it's something that can't happen, but I would say I think that's a sign you're a dysfunctional GM and a
To
dysfunctional
stop you there,
organization.
I feel like I fall on the opposite of that. I mean, I'm paying you to be my GM, so if you're going to just listen to what these coaches are saying, why would I not just like why are I even employ you? You know what I'm saying?
I get
Your
it, but
job is your job is to scout the talent and then have your draft board and you build a team around the defense that you hired to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
that's your
it's
position.
you know,
I'm
and
not I'm not hiring these guys to be like a GM. They're my coaches. I'm not. That's my whole point. And then for me, this is a Cowboys thing. So you can point to some Cowboys drafts of recent memory. Really, the Mozzie Smith draft, that whole class was horrible. And Mozzie Smith is a Dan Quinn guy. Dan Quinn wanted them. And then I've been following Dan Quinn players and then their draft classes in DC. Watching outside of the Jaden Daniels thing, I don't really know how to feel about that. It's been awful. Like he can't. He's had terrible drafts. And that also falls like you can have like other like coaches, D line coaches, linebacker coaches, whatever it is. They put a ring in it. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't want my GM to be that open minded. Is what I'm getting at.
I understand what you mean about the GM doing his job, the coach doing his job, and all that. But we've got to acknowledge there's got to be some level of
I'll listen to you,
cohesiveness,
but like I don't want to hear you bang the table
right?
during the draft.
And
You have
and
to think,
then and
you
then
know.
and then which we both kind of agree there, but to like what extent, like how much is it supposed to be? To me, my mindset is always that if from a team standpoint you want everyone to have one mindset, to have one goal, win a Super Bowl. I'm the guard. I've got to execute at a high level at all my guard assignments all year, all the way through the offense, the defense, and then that goes through the coaches. That should also run through the organization. And I feel like ideally, this isn't going to always happen, but ideally, from either owner or GM, all the way down to, the long snapper and, the fourth string offensive tackle, everyone should be bought into the same mindset. And on some level, they should kind of all know what the team needs, but it also should be figured out through conversation, in my opinion. That's just my approach, but we don't have to get into a massive debate
I like
over
talking
that.
about it. I mean, I think it's a good
Yeah, no.
conversation
I think it is, but yeah, I guess the reason
because it's important.
it's always best when there's one agreed goal in mindset, is my
And it's
opinion,
also
and
best
you have to.
to employ a guy to make those decisions, not have him have these trickle down to where he has to
Mhm.
rely on these guys to make these players look good.
It's
You know,
this sort of thing is decided in the interview process. I'm sure there are GMs out there who feel this way, that the coach shouldn't have a say, and maybe if they are hiring a coach, they'll find someone who says, I'm not I'm not interested in interfering with your draft picks. I will accept whoever you draft. I'll still give you some feedback, but I'll accept whoever you draft. I just want to do my job and coach the team. But I'm also sure there's the opposite, and I'm sure those GMs and coaches find each other. You know, as to what works the best, we don't know. Every coach GM's relationship with each other. I'm sure there's someone who's looked up into all of it that perhaps has this all figured out. But my guess would be that the coaches and the GMs that are, I guess, on the same page and are constantly going back and forth with each other, would be the ones that are the best. But I'm interested to know Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman's relationship now that you bring
we
this
already know
up.
what it is. We already know what it is because
Yeah,
the same for every Eagles head coach outside of Andy Reid, they're yes men.
yeah,
Because that's all Howie Roseman, what he's doing. He's the puppet master, and that's just how it is. And that's what the Doug Peterson issues. That's what it stemmed from. He got fired like a year or two after winning a Super Bowl because he didn't agree with Howie Roseman.
yeah.
But to tie this back to like Dallas in this draft philosophy thing, because that's what we rely on the most. Like a lot of the talk of this year, it's like for Matt Lafleur, like we need to draft players to fit Matt Lafleur's system, and Matt Lafleur is going to have an input on these players. The year prior to Mike Zimmer likes these guys, so we draft player. It's just you end up drafting players that fit other people's system that you're not guaranteed to be there. That's when you fire like when you set like for Dallas, they have three different defensive coordinators, three different defensive coordinators who had input on the draft. So we have globs of players that don't fit the current team and what the current team is trying to do. You know what I'm saying?
I
Where
do.
if you're a GM and you're drafting for your defense, you have an idea of what the defense is going to be from a year to year basis, and you have an idea of how to scout talent, and all that. And like with Dallas, Will McClay is basically our general manager. He's basically our GM, but his title is like VP, like vice president of player personnel. But he's the guy that runs our drafts, and I feel like when he's just left alone, he ends up having great drafts. And look at his history in Dallas, outside of like I guess the 2023 draft, and then certain parts of like recent drafts, it's been great. But then you hear now how these coaches are having input and stuff, and it's just a mess. I feel like it
Yeah.
gets messy when you rely on coaches. Is where my
I,
biggest point.
well, yeah, and I think the reason is the biggest truth behind what you're saying is when there's too many voices, you don't have a vision. If
Yes.
worst comes to worst, I do want my GM being the only one making the decisions, because too much interference from different coaches. You're putting your faith in the GM to organize all that in his brain, decide what's best, how he wants to, take input, how seriously he wants to take it, and then you have no vision because it's none of the coach's individual vision, it's not the GM's
Yeah.
vision, and there's no plan. So what I would say is, if you can't have everyone on the same page, then yes, your GM should be the only one making those decisions, and I'll agree with that. But maybe for dysfunctional organizations it's not possible, but you should always strive, in my opinion, to have everyone on that. Like Robert Baratheon, what's the bigger number, 5 or 1? And he says 1. Not 5 ideas, not 5 armies, 1 army behind 1 man and 1 purpose, and
And
that's
nobody
that's how
does
you
that.
win.
And nobody does that better than Howie Roseman.
You're right.
He is the
You're
only guy making decisions there. He's not relying on your coaches.
and maybe you're right about that. I'll have to dive into that a little bit this week, and
It's Howie Roseman. He's a god.
yeah,
He always has been.
he's the god of GMs. But speaking of
Also, one more final thing on this, just to
okay,
close it up. Like, I feel like from a fan perspective, like you'll watch a player for like their first year, and I feel like you could probably relate to this, and you could see the expectations, and you could see them play well, and then it's like you change your head coach, you change your offensive coordinator, you change your defensive coordinator, then you just see a huge fall off, and this player doesn't even play anymore, or they're just not the same player. I feel like there's a lot of examples in that for Dallas.
yeah,
The number one guy in my mind is Maris Leafau, a linebacker. Mike Zimmer loved. He was a smart guy. He had a great rookie year, and then this year he can't even go on the field. It's just all messed up. But like that's kind of my worry when it comes to the Giants. And you already fired Daboll, and then it's a Jackson Dart thing, and that's kind of where that's my fear with that whole scenario with this because how is it different than when you hired Daboll or whoever you hired for Daniel Jones? It's just a process being repeated in a
Yeah,
sense.
I would be worried about, Dart and, is he going to be able to relate and learn under a new coach? I think he will be able to, but it's definitely a valid concern. My biggest example is Deontay Banks after Martindale left. He was really
Yes,
sticky in
he
man
would.
coverage, and the fact he couldn't get his head around wasn't as big of a deal when you're already kind of in coverage on the guy. When you're trying to do that right after you're kind of a half step behind because you're late on your zone coverage assignment, instead of just following someone, which is much more like natural, which an athlete like him can do. It just all fell apart with Banks. And like I said, we got a very opportune kick return touchdown by him today to show off that athleticism. So just, yeah, very, it's when you have a rotating door, it's not usually good for anyone, but sometimes, in my opinion, you need a clean slate, especially if you know it's not the answer, you got to move on to something else that might be. So
To bring this back to the NFC North, like another example of this late bloomer though is Nashawn Wright. He was drafted in Dallas, 99th overall pick, third round. Al Harris was our defensive backs coach. He's now in Chicago. Nashawn Wright follows him, and then we see him blossom into. He should have been a Pro Bowler this year. I think he had like 6 interceptions or something, but I think he got snubbed because the Eagles got two. They got fucking
yeah.
DeGene in a Pro Bowl somehow.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, but so
exciting whites.
back to the Bears though, like they've been a I feel like they had the talent and they set all this up with like we've seen Ryan Poles last few years. It felt successful, like his player acquisition, like from front, and they just didn't play well. And now to see Ben Johnson bringing the best out of all these players has been great. Plus, you could easily what was the biggest thing the Bears did? They invested in their O line this offseason. They picked up
Yeah.
the whole interior O line's brand new. They like paid a premium price. They made trades, and this is what they reaped the rewards of building their line. That's how I feel where
I,
they're at now.
I was going to counter kind of what you were saying about Howie Roseman with Ben Johnson and say what we felt in the Bears offseason really felt like Ben Johnson's plan. And that was his
No.
one vision that he had because Ryan Poles had been there for years and he had opportunities to bring in offensive linemen. And he didn't do it really that substantially until Ben Johnson got there. And then you look at the draft, Colston Loveland in the first round. You got Kyle Monangai late, but he got his running back value. And it just felt like, a lot of picks that were kind of similar to some of the Detroit picks that felt really odd at the time. But, they start to kind of flourish and age well over time. And, yeah, it's just kind of the other end of the coin. And I feel like Ben Johnson has to be receiving most of the credit for the Bears' success because I feel like a lot of the players
I
that they
agree.
got were his babies. Luther Burden, as his guy, his maybe Amon Ra for the Bears. It's
I,
it's mostly credit to him. I mean, Ryan Poles has been kind of
Ryan
messy.
Poles though is the only way they're here now though is what Ryan Poles has put together because we've seen like they've had a lot of offseason hype for years now with their drafts like the year prior that like the only way they got Caleb Williams was because they traded out of the number one pick the year prior
Yeah, and it was
and
a
they
great move. It
yeah
was.
and who did that?
It was him, but
Who
you
did
got
that?
to be really
Who were the
bad.
players?
You got to be
Who were
really
their players?
bad to get the number one overall pick and then to finish in the top 10 again or top
That was
11.
early on. That was early on in his tenure though, because they got Darnell
Yeah.
Wright. I think the year they traded back, in the year prior they landed Caleb
Yeah,
Williams,
that was
and
the
then
one.
they also got Roma Dunze 10th overall. Like,
Yeah.
and those guys have been highly successful
Then
so
they
far.
also took like a punter though, in like the fourth. That was
And the
kind of
punter's
crazy.
one of the best punters in the league, right?
Maybe, but I think it's time we move on from the NFC North.
Lions. We didn't really talk about the
Oh
Lions
yeah, we didn't even talk about the Lions. We got to talk about the Lions, and
and the Vikings.
it's just so embarrassing for the Lions now swept by JJ Nine McCarthy and Max Brosmer for the Vikings. And just kind of to me it was a superior coaching staff that really, showed why the Vikings, are going to age better over time because the Lions lost their two coordinators. Jared Goff outside in the cold, all the turnovers, a statue, couldn't figure it out against the Brian Flores defense. And it seemed like the Lions had not a lot of creativity on offense and not enough answers to move the ball, and they allowed themselves to lose to Max Brosmer. And they're now 8-8 on the season. They've not played well in the division, and it seems like without Ben Johnson and without Aaron Glenn, what was initially a bridge quarterback in Jared Goff, that the Lions' run over the past couple years is kind of coming to an end with the emergence of the Bears and the future that the Packers have, and the Vikings might.
Future? What future?
The
How's their
Packers have a
future any
future. They're
different?
going to be contenders next year with Micah. Let me finish the statement. And
Wouldn't the Lions be in this? You couldn't say the same thing about them. They've had more success than the Packers have.
the Packers
The
still
last
have
half
all
decade.
they still have all their coaches though,
So
and
do the Lions.
the Lions didn't lose to the
That's their
Packers,
offensive
or the
coordinator.
Packers.
Dan Campbell's there still.
The
It's his
Packers
program.
and Lions lost to the same team in the playoffs, but I just wanted to say the Vikings also, maybe JJ9 McCarthy might not be so bad. I mean, he did look a little better down the end of the season, but either way, the Vikings just seemingly with a brighter future, at least further along in, taking those critical steps to finding your quarterback, whether it is
Their offensive
McCarthy
scheme
or
is
you have to
broken.
bring someone in. And then I just feel, well, if they're winning this game when the Lions have Jared
You
Goff,
haven't
it
acknowledged.
signals
You
to
haven't
me,
acknowledged why they're winning though.
well, their defense.
Yes, and who's their defensive coordinator?
Brian Flores.
Yes,
Yeah. I said
that's the
coaching.
reason why they're
I
winning.
said the,
I
the
think.
Vikings won because
Yeah,
of coaching staff.
I think he's the number one. I feel like he should be the number one head coaching target. Bring Brian Flores in,
He should, and the
especially
Giants aren't going to get him.
especially with how the Dolphin stuff has aged. Just how correct he knew right away too. It wasn't that guy.
He
And
did.
I find that hilarious looking back at it. And then how much he took the scrutiny and all that stuff, and now he's just been great anywhere he's been. So that's the guy I would want to bring in. I want him to be my defensive coordinator because the Vikings in Seattle to me are on the same level of like just how funky they like their systems that they run and how different it
Yeah.
is compared to the rest of the league.
They're different systems, but they are the funkiest in the league. And
Yeah.
I feel like Flores almost doesn't even have many clones. Even though he is, I believe, like a kind of remnant of the Patriots and Bill Belichick and
Yes.
kind of what Vrabel does, but he kind of has his own flavor where he takes like the multiple fronts and the versatile linebackers, moving them all over the place, blitzing, faking blitz, and then not blitzing, and all that kind of stuff. Crazy coverages. Whereas Mike Mack has that sort of individual assignment per defensive player or group like defensive line and linebackers, and it really is like a whole different way to describe defensive coverages and blitzes and stuff. And it's a whole lot for offensive quarterbacks to get used to. But yeah, I think Flores should be the number one head coaching candidate. I think the Dolphins failed him. They tried to corrupt him and get him to tank, and he didn't want to do that. You said it with Tua, he didn't want to commit to him, and the Dolphins did. And I don't know who outside the Giants is going to be in the front running spot, but he could also
What
just
if
stay with the Vikings.
what if his contract's expired? What if Green Bay brought him in to change their defense?
That would be pretty insane if they did do that. That would be an
Yes.
insane cop. And I think Brian Flores, if he wants to win a Super Bowl, probably should go coach for the Packers. Or,
That's my best fit going into the offseason. It would be like the same thing of taking Caleb, taking Ben Johnson. Imagine taking Brian Flores from the
yeah,
Vikings.
they got to get in on this. And that'll hurt
Yes.
the Vikings tremendously and every other team in the division. And the Vikings without Brian Flores, I mean, it just.
It'd be disgusting.
They gotta
That's
figure.
why.
They gotta figure
That's
out
why
if
I'm
McCarthy's the guy very soon.
That's why I
next
was
year.
so confused when you said their future was brighter than Detroit. I was just like, whoa, this
Because
guy could be gone.
I'll tell you why. Because that does sound weird, but I'll tell you what I mean by that, and that's the fact that Detroit has already hit their ceiling, in my opinion, which means they're only in for a decline of disappointing seasons where they don't win the Super Bowl moving forward. And and then in hindsight, you're gonna say, well, if Goff wasn't the guy and we already hit our ceiling, I kind of wish we hit the reset button. We don't have
I
any of
wasn't
our
gonna say
coaches figured out right now. We're not sure about Jared Goff, and this defense is completely expiring. And we've got a young offensive nucleus that we need to take advantage of. So we kind of need to restart.
I
Now,
think they just need to get the right offensive coordinator in there, and they'll be back to being the Lions. I think because they had their bad offense trying to replace Ben Johnson in house, I believe. I feel like they replaced both their coordinators in-house, and that was just a massive mistake.
Yeah,
Trying to copy their previous regimen. I just think they need to find something fresh, and they have a lot of talent there that's not going. Like, it's locked up. Like the star talent that they have is pretty much under team control. So I don't see this window closing. I just think they need to hit a. They need to do a What do you call it? It's not a reset. It's a retool or whatever.
they need to reload.
Reload. Yeah, they need to
Well,
reload.
well, I'll tell you this. I don't think they're not going to be competitive. I think their window is closed. I think they missed their shot.
I don't know.
I
I think that's
I think
premature.
when you had Amon Ra on,
They still
without a
have Amon.
contract, Panay Sewell while they were on the rookie contracts, they were playing
Still have
that
another rookie.
49ers team. That was their opportunity, and Dan Campbell said in that post-game interview, he kind of let it slip, and he sort of backpedaled, but he said that might have been our only shot. And I think he really meant
Well,
that.
it's a lot of
He
people feel that
knew.
way.
He knew we're not going to be able to keep Ben Johnson. If it should have been last year, if they were going to do it, and they couldn't do it with the injuries, they completely choked versus the Commanders. And I feel like I would rather be in a position where I'm trying to find a new quarterback than kind of hopelessly missing out on the Super Bowl because my quarterback's limited or we can't find the coach, whatever it may be. You got to guarantee it's all going to go right, and they had that once and they couldn't make the most of it. But it is time that we move on to
This brings me to the Jets.
the
And then the Aaron
Jets.
Glenn, yeah, like the Aaron Glenn thing. Like to me, this is like Gerard Mayo last year with the Patriots. It just doesn't seem like a good fit at all.
No, yeah,
So, what would you fire Aaron Glenn? Would the Jets be a team that goes after a new head coach?
like Brian
And
Flores.
If Aaron Glenn was fired with the Detroit Lions, would he just go back to being defensive coordinator there?
He could do that. Robert Saleh
Mm.
kind of did that when he left the Jets. He went back to the 49ers and found success. And I
Yeah,
think Aaron Glenn could do that. But I also don't think like his system is really that great that he left behind. So I think, like I said, I think they need to kind of restructure the way their team is built. But
where do you think about the Jets then? Where they're at?
I think they're in a terrible
You don't even
spot.
want you don't even want to talk
I
about
don't
them.
even want to talk about the Jets right now. We'll get to it in the offseason, don't you worry. But once we find out the draft order, other than that, that really, they got wrecked, worse than I could have imagined. So,
Could you
but
imagine though, like they fire him, like they traded away some big pieces, and then they just fire Aaron Glenn? That would just be that would seem so weird to me.
yeah, well, it
'Cause-
kind of goes to what I was saying about Joe Shane, where it's like you don't want like your bad coach or GM to be the ones in charge of all that responsibility of landing those draft picks, and I get it. If he's not the guy or you don't feel great about it, you should feel ready to move on. If that's really how you feel. Now, I held on to Dable for so long, but I thought he was a great offensive mind, and he was just
Might have been
surrounded
right.
by a lot more problems than people realized. But anyway,
You were right
he's
about it this
still.
whole time.
I
I couldn't
tried to tell you, dude. He was the only thing we had on our squad that was
Yeah.
actually worth keeping, and we chose to fire him. We betrayed Brian Dable. Well, the Giants really did betray him and throw him under the bus for no reason when he was the one thing attached to the thing the Giants had going for him. I'm telling you, it was a horrible, horrible decision to throw him under and not Shane Bowen. And the Giants were poverty in that moment. So, but I want to move it on to our last two subjects, and that's just sort of the AFC playoff teams that are kind of fighting for their last seeding. Most of it is decided, but some of it got decided on Saturday night when the Texans defeated the Chargers with a suffocating defensive performance, 5 sacks versus Justin Herbert in a 20-16 win. The Texans are now the 5 seed in the AFC, and they will play the winner of the AFC North in the wild card round. While the Chargers' magic is starting to show some warts, and they dropped to the 6th seed. The Steelers, they choked against the Browns this week, and the Ravens, who won on Saturday night with their backup in the battle of backups, Tyler Huntley and Derrick Henry's 4-touchdown performance. So now they, 8-8, are going to face the 9-7 Steelers in Week 18 for the division title and playoff spot. And Joey, I just want to know what you thought about the Steelers game and their loss, what it means for this Week 18 matchup, and how you'd feel about the winner of the AFC North going up against this Texans defense in the AFC wildcard round. I know it's kind of
I
a
think
lot.
I think the only player that can give. I think the only way any the only player that can have a real impact on Houston advancing would be Aaron Rodgers to me. That's why I was so frustrated. And then just the conversation today, like really last night it started of how somehow the Browns were just going to win today, and
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense to me how they lost today. I just don't understand how that happened. I get the record thing against like I get there was something that came out where they were like 0-4-1 or something like that against the Browns. It was a weird. I don't have it on the right
You're
at this
talking
moment,
about
but
the Steelers.
yeah, the Steelers losing to the Browns like for they're like I guess their last 5 games or something where it matters like this point of the season
Yeah.
because they always find a way to be 9-8-1 or something.
Right.
Like they always make their way no matter how the start is or how poor of a start is. This is where they end up every time, and I just don't know how to wrap my head around it. Is this hell in a way for the Steelers? Like is this like
It's purgatory. It's neither
yeah, this is
heaven
hell.
nor hell. It's just nothing. Neutrality.
Yeah, because I feel like they have the talent, and then they have the highest paid defense, and then you have a guy like Rodgers. I get the DK not being there today, getting suspended, definitely like messed shit up here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get, and then there's the ratings part of all this stuff, and how really nothing next week would have mattered for the NFL and ratings. But now we have we have two divisional battles now,
Yeah.
which kind of
That
should
still
have been
would have
irrelevant.
Panthers Bucks still would have mattered, but you're right. It would have been a meaningless Week 18 for the most part.
Yes, and that's kind of another thing where I think about how rigged is all this
Yeah.
in a sense.
Did
How
they do
like
it?
because I feel like you could rig the NFL and it's just how the refs script the game to be. Because holding could be on any play, really. You know what I mean? And there's so many holds that are missed anyway. It's just so many opinion based calls when it comes to this stuff. Where that's where to me it's not the players that have any idea. It's just like how it's all planned, I guess.
Well, yeah. If I had to guess, it would be someone who doesn't have to talk to the media very often. You know, that it's not usual for refs to ever speak to the media, and it would be things like the owner. We've seen it. The owners, at least, when they're trying to tank. Brian Flores was offered $100,000 for every game he lost on the Miami Dolphins when he was on his way out. And he rejected it, and he brought it up because he sued the NFL for
Yeah, he won,
basically
didn't he?
blackballing him. And it really makes you think. Is there more stuff Brian Flores knows about that situation that he didn't reveal because he's in an agreement. He still wants to coach in the NFL, so he's not going to just completely out them on everything. But if he was willing to say that, then what don't we know? It's a good question. How much
There's
of
a
it
lot.
is officiating? Well, with the market that there is for sports gambling, there's definitely a reason
Yes.
for suspicion. Follow the money of what could be rigged in the NFL. Well, I would say players overs and unders, scoring over and unders. When teams decide to kick field goals when they're down by 3 scores at the end of games. And you can lie under the cover of point differential when you're a team that's already eliminated from the playoffs. Raiders. And a team that's in Vegas. I mean, come on. If there was anyone who was got a red flag for it, it would probably be the Raiders. Moving the Vegas and all
They
that.
completely threw the game today.
And
They found a way to do
they
that.
completely threw the game today after looking really good versus the Texans, and the Giants were they were playing the Giants backups to the backups because everyone's hurt and we're playing backups now. So it's like one of the worst Giants teams we've fielded, and we put up 34 points and held them to 10. Like, how does that even happen? I was thinking about it during Deontay Banks' kickoff return. I'm like, you could pull one of those special teams players aside, 3 of them on one side of a lane, and say at one point during today's game, I want you to, fail to hold your assignment of having your lane. Don't get off your block. Let the kick return come through you. And if the kick return doesn't make a touchdown out of it, if he doesn't score, it is what it is. But he's probably getting 50 yards. It could be little things like that. There's a lot of things you could look at. But hey, it's just speculation. We don't know for sure. But it's definitely suspicious sometimes.
Was the NFL better or sports in general? Weren't they better before like the legalized gambling part of all this? Like I feel like the gambling thing and then how bad it is in general for everybody, like the public, and how much money's lost. I just feel like that kind of changed.
It's a bad thing for society.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing for society.
Yeah, I would say it probably is. Yeah.
You can allow people to lose their checks
You got you
from like
got you
on a
got
one
like
day.
fathers gambling
Yeah,
their kids like college funds on like
yeah,
the Jets, or like the Browns. And it's
yeah.
like, is that really a good way to go? Is that something we
Really,
should be
just
allowing?
and it makes people watch sports that they would have never have watched or
Yeah,
have had interest in. You
I
know,
think it's
like
tough.
you have big money in this like terrible Division 1 football game that's being played on a Tuesday.
Yeah, like it creates value.
Yeah,
It does create value, and that's why it's ultimately never going to go away. Gambling's been a thing for
yeah.
ever
But
since the
wasn't
beginning of
it better
time.
when it was kind of hush hush? Like it was like harder to like get access to in a sense.
Well, it's been a slow
It's
bleed.
way too easy now.
It's been a slow bleed because not every state had it. Every state doesn't have it now. It's still something that's kind of going on. And at least when it came to New Jersey, and it's not in PA, I've kind of been back and forth.
It's
So
in
I've been,
PA.
or it's in PA now, but I'm pretty sure it was like recently a thing. I get
It was
some.
always
Okay, so I had it backwards. It was not always in New Jersey, but my point is, it is something that's going to be a slow process. Maybe, that's even intentional because it makes you forget about it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, is the world probably a better place without it? Yeah, are sports probably, better watched when there's not a financial incentive for someone to get, 50 receiving yards? Yeah, I would say so. When you're just more interested in the narrative, but yeah, creating value is creating value. It's never gonna go anywhere. It's bringing money
what's
to the
the uptick?
league, huh?
What's the uptick in like certain crimes and stuff because of anger that this causes and shit like that? You know what I mean? Like
Um,
how dysfunctional could this make families across the nation?
are you trying to get me to get AI to gather the information of?
No, this is just kind of where this whole topic led me when it comes to rigging. Why would a league be rigged? And then we talk about what's rigged, you know? I just find it fascinating. But
Yeah, we
yeah.
could we could go all day about the idea of it being rigged, but ultimately this question was originally about
The
yeah,
AFC
the
playoff
AFC.
picture.
The Steelers and Ravens. Ultimately, I don't feel like
No one cares.
I don't think either of them are going to be able to beat the Texans. I think it's a free win for whoever has that 5 seed. The Ravens are a complete dysfunctional mess. Although Henry had 4 touchdowns, so are the Packers. They're a mess too right now. And for the Steelers, it's like I get they didn't have DK, but if you're so fragile to the point where you don't have DK, you score 6 points on the Browns and lose. You're not a legitimate threat in the AFC. And the Texans, they would be looking to go on to play most likely, I would say, the Patriots or the Jaguars in the divisional round, because the Broncos would be playing either the Bills or maybe them. They could maybe play the Texans. They could
I
be
think
playing anyone.
those are the two teams that I would keep an eye on just to make a run, Houston and Jacksonville, because I feel like they are the biggest wild cards in this whole AFC picture. I don't know how much to put. I don't want to put too much stock into Drake May. Like I love the Patriots. I love the direction they're headed. I love the player that Drake May is, but I can't say they're going to go to I can't expect them, I guess, to go all the way to Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
I
Where
think
if guys like Trevor Lawrence, who's in year 6, whatever, with Liam Cohen, who I feel like was the greatest hire of the offseason, if we want to talk about that. Like, we should look at the head coaches that were hired this past cycle and how they did.
we can
But
in a second. But yeah.
I love where they're at. I feel like they have a complete team, so I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run. And then the same thing with Houston, just off the defense that they have. Their offense just needs to do like if they can put up 20 to 24 points more times than not, they can win a game, compared to your average NFL team.
Yeah. I agree that I think the Texans defense is definitely elite enough, and my point actually was going to be about these AFC teams that I feel like when you compare the best units from each team, the Texans defense, the Jaguars offense, the Patriots offense, the Broncos defense, I would say I think the Texans defense is the most elite unit in that bunch, of all of them. And I'm actually going to put the chart on the screen. Joey, you won't be able to see this, but the viewers will be able to. This is the EPA chart for the 2025 NFL season.
It's a fake stat, by the way.
And Joey, if you're watching, you'll be able to see it eventually. But yeah, pull it up. So this is the chart that honestly is probably going to represent 2025 as a whole, because week 18 is going to be a garbage week for a lot of teams. And so this is going to show you how pretty much every team played during their meaningful football games this year. And what you should see is that in this upper right hand corner is where you want to be. That means you have a great offense and a great defense. Right now, we see the two kind of yin and yangs, the Seahawks and the Rams. To me, they are the two best teams in the NFL, and the EPA chart reflects that. And what else does the EPA chart show us? In this middle right here is teams that are just kind of average at both. That's where you find your fraudulent 2022 Minnesota Vikings teams, who were like 13-4, but they were actually right around this middle spot in the EPA chart. And this chart should be able to foreshadow us what is going to happen in this year's playoffs. And looking at the AFC teams, looking at the Texans, you can see clearly that although they don't have as good an offense as the Jaguars or the Patriots or the Broncos, by EPA, we can see that their defense is by far the best when it comes to EPA, kind of similar to how the Patriots offense is. But I'm going to call out the schedule there, because when you look at the schedules, the Texans had one of the hardest in the NFL and the Patriots had the easiest by a long shot. So that's why I have the Texans number 3 as my third best team in the NFL and my best team in the AFC. I really believe in what their defense is. I've always been a big defender of CJ Stroud, calling the whole sophomore slump theory kind of ridiculous.
They look better, though, with Davis Mills. Yes, he's there, Malik Willis.
Well, Davis Mills is a good backup, but I'm not going to go ahead and say they looked better with Malik Willis. I mean, that's just not true. I mean,
I think it's a fact.
Davis Mills is a good backup, and they should be glad they have him. But and they even won some big games with him this year, and I'll give him his credit. But I think all that matters is that CJ Stroud, your presumed starter, I will say, just for you, Joey, is playing well now. He is playing well. Jaden Higgins is breaking out too, and this Chargers team, it looked like last year in the playoffs, but it was honestly. It was even more impressive by the Texans offense in this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little EPA chart. You guys got to go find that. It's such a great tool. And, yeah, that's kind of how I view the sort of AFC finale for the playoff seeding and all that kind of stuff. Kind of a nothing burger, to be honest, for a lot of this Week 17.
Is this chart saying Dallas has an elite offense but the worst defensive football?
It is saying quite precisely that the Cowboys have the most atrocious. It actually wasn't even showing up, I think, on the camera because it was so low.
It is. It's in the bottom. It's the only team in the bottom right corner.
I will put it back because it is. Yes, this also backs up the video of what's stopping Dak Prescott very well. You can see the Cowboys in that bottom right corner. So lonely. No one's even close to as bad as they are on defense, even after all the big moves that they made. It only lasted like 2 weeks, and
that just tells me how much they have defensive talent. It's just Eberflus has no idea how to use them. Like that's what I'm getting from that whole thing. Really, the Quinnen Williams trade tells me that because I feel like we got Quinnen Williams. I know he's one of the best players in football, and he's just even not seeing it.
Yeah, well, I think you guys are having a little bit of give up syndrome right now, but I mean the offense, even beyond all that, is still grading out as about the third best in the NFL, actually ahead of the Rams. And the Packers are progressing.
They look to be like the exact same team.
Yeah,
how atrocious Dallas' defense is.
And then when you look at defense, it's Texans, Seahawks, Browns, Vikings, Jaguars, and Rams. Very, very interesting.
It's the Texans in Seattle and a huge, massive gap when it comes to defense.
Yeah, that's right. So
is that our Super Bowl matchup? Is that what we're going to predict right here?
Texans, right now? I think Texans Seahawks or Texans Rams is probably what I would say right now.
I like that. I like that a lot. I like that the chart kind of reaffirms that too.
Yeah, and that chart you got to understand. I'm not I think if I've spent some time and trying to figure out what stat seems to be the best for kind of predicting that stuff. And I saw a great video. I'll try to give them a shout out in the description. Describing what EPA means and how he was a Vikings fan and how looking back on that season, that EPA chart showing the Vikings in the middle showed exactly why they were upset and why, it explained why he was so shocked because he wasn't thinking about it that way. And we even saw the Chiefs team last year was kind of around the middle. You can sort through the years on that chart. You could see the Chiefs last year, they were winning by these very small margins against very mid teams. And you should try to be in the upper right-hand corner on that chart. The only thing that kind of affects it is schedule, but that's it.
You know what this also tells me?
What
I also already believed. The Broncos are fraudulent.
It could tell you the Broncos are fraudulent. Yeah, if you look
where
at
they're
it.
at.
Yeah.
They're right next to the
They're
Chargers and the
the
Eagles.
Jaguars. The Jaguars are near them too.
The Jags would be the best of those four teams.
That's correct. They would be the best of the Eagles, Chargers, and Broncos. And the Bears, they're on this
Bears are
list.
fun too. We kind of that's why I was saying.
Hmm.
That's why I was kind of thinking that they are the Cowboys of previous seasons.
Yeah, the defense is still getting the turnovers though, so the EPA numbers look much better because those
Yeah.
are going to drastically change your chances of winning. But yeah, there's
So
so
out of
sad
those,
seeing the Colts and what they were this year, you know, and what
yeah,
they've turned into. I've taken the chart away, so I don't know how long you'll be able to see it. But
I have a pause, but I was going to ask you between those five teams, like Jags, Bears, Broncos, Chargers, Eagles, like which one would you expect if there was any of those five to go on a run? Who would you expect it to be? History tells you it should be the Eagles. So
yeah, I mean, I feel like the Eagles should be the team, but actually the AFC is going to be much easier to go through, I would say. So I think, the AFC teams, who among them, it's between the Jaguars and the Broncos to me, and I would probably
that's
honestly,
it's a huge ball never test right there.
yeah, I mean, we saw the
It's the
Jaguars,
Jags. It's
you
the
know,
Jags.
it is them. And it shows it on the chart too, but when we saw it, Trevor Lawrence's ceiling is definitely higher than Bo Nix's, and as long as he's hitting it, then they should be ranked above the Broncos because, their defense has played really well this year too. I mean, they're on about the same level as the Rams and the Vikings, which is really good. And they've even got some pieces that could be coming back next year and make them scary. So yeah, I'm big on the Jaguars, but I think that elite Texans defense is I think it's a little more desirable in my opinion. But yeah, so I think that is going to be it for episode 33 of the Illegal Formation podcast, covering the Texans, the Giants culture win, the Bears and their future in the NFC North, and lots of other things that are kind of wrapping up this 2025 season. We're going to get to the playoffs soon, which I think all of us are ready for. We're all done with this confusing ass regular season. We just want to see who's going to be the ones who actually make the most of it. No Mahomes, no Joe Burrow, no Lamar Jackson, maybe, and Josh Allen looks to be the one who would be the sole representative in the AFC, and they lost today. So, it's been a crazy season. Can't wait for the playoffs. If you are watching the stream right now, drop a like on it to push it out to more people just like you and I. And make sure to subscribe so that you can be alerted and notified of all the other streams that go up in this week, like our top 10 for the last week of the season and our preview for the last week of the season. And that's all I got for you guys in this one. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.